Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to go ahead and call this regularly scheduled 7 p.m. City Commission meeting to order. I'll begin. I do have one addition request to add item SP-2206 as new item 10. This is a request for a special permit to allow alcohol sales during a fall festival at Easton Newberry Sports Complex. It's resolution 2022-71. This came in as a late last-minute request. Does the commission want to hear? You want to hear it tonight? You need a little more time to think about that?
I'm fine with it. Let's do it.
You want to hear it?
Yeah.
So moved as amended.
So moved. I have a motion from Commissioner Martin as amended to add that item. Second from Commissioner Mazon. Any other comments or questions? I have no other amendments. Comments, questions from the dais? Public comments, questions on the motion on the floor? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Before I ask Pastor Rocky to come down and give tonight's invocation, we've been working with the family of the Nippers to try to get them up here to honor Jimbo. We just haven't been able to do that. The family's very private, and they have not wanted. I don't want to let someone who dedicated so much time to the city to go by without comment. So I just wanted to take one moment before we have an invocation. Maybe we can include them in the invocation to acknowledge that Jimbo Calvin Nipper, passed away at 81 years of age on Sunday, August 14th, due to an automobile accident. While he held many jobs, his final career was with the city of Newberry, where he worked for over 20 years in various departments and positions before retiring. In addition, Jimbo operated the Hitchin Post Mud Bog for 31 years. That might be where you know Jimbo from if you ever were out there. He was a friend of those in need and was always there to lend a helping hand. The things he loved most in life were his family, fishing, and taking his dogs for rides in his truck. If you're ever behind somebody driving about 20 miles an hour in an old pickup truck, that was probably Jimbo, because he didn't go very much over 20 miles an hour. He was never in a hurry. So I want to recognize him for the work that he did, contributing 20 years of service to our city, being a lifelong committed resident to our community as residents. And we're going to extend our sincere sympathy to his wife, Diane Nipper, and extended family members. And if they ever do decide that they want to come up and have a proclamation read for the commission, we'll certainly do that. I also wanted to take a moment to once again extend our condolences to the Woodcock family. I wanted to really thank the community for showing up at the First Baptist Church this past weekend. It's always a measure of a life well lived when you run out of seats at the funeral. And we were in the choir, we were in the fellowship hall. There were so many people who wanted to come, so thank you to the community. And with that, I would like to invite Pastor Rocky McKinley from Destiny Community Church to come give tonight's invocation. If you would please rise for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, which will follow immediately after. Pastor Rocky.
Let us pray. Well, Father, we come before you asking for your grace. Lord, we pray for Jimbo's family. Lord, we just pray, Lord, that you would just bring them comfort during this time. For Miss Linda's family, Lord, we ask the same, that you would just continue to comfort them. Let them feel the love of their community. Lord, as you instructed Jeremiah, Lord, we pray tonight for the peace and prosperity of our city. We know that as our city prospers, Lord, we too will prosper. And so, Lord, I ask tonight that you would guide each and every commissioner. I pray that you would guide our mayor, Lord, and all the city staff, Lord. Lead us and guide us. Help us, Lord. And just continue to bless Newberry, Lord. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Pastor Rocky, thank you for that invocation and congratulations. As an English teacher, I always like to celebrate when we have new authors in our midst. And I saw a social media post that says somebody is a new author in our midst. So congratulations, Pastor. I look forward to reading that in its entirety. And that's going to take us to presentations. Brian, are you going to present the Community Planning Month Proclamation and Planning while I find Go ahead. Are we still down to one screen?
It appears that way. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. To the month of October is it's the Community Planning, National Community Planning Month. It's also the time when we do a brief annual department review for the commissioners, give you an idea of what's been going on. Of course, you're aware because you voted on most of it, but remind you of the things that we've accomplished over the last year in the planning department. Briefly again, for those who are in the audience, right now the planning staff consists of the director, principal planner, which is Jean-Paul Perez. We have an open position for an entry-level planner, and we have our wonderful planning assistant, Janine. We also share staffing duties with economic development, community development, redevelopment agency, code enforcement, and building department. I am a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners. The budget is right at $257,490, of which 126 and change is the operating expense, for a total of 300, not of which, but in addition to which is 226 and change, for a total budget right under $400,000. The type of functions that we work with, of course, that come before you on a regular basis are comprehensive land use changes, land development regulation changes in the form of rezonings or code changes, the subdivision phase approvals, site development plans for commercial, non-residential developments, and a variety of other planning processes. And a lot of annexations usually, but this year we've slowed that down just a little bit, and we've backed it down to basically accumulating a handful of applications for once or twice a year now, instead of having them constantly come before the commission. And then hundreds of general inquiries. Annexations last year, we annexed about 163 acres in total, down over over the last few years. We had a couple of years where we had over 1,000 acres come in. But the important one there, 0 parcels in conflict resolution with Alachua County this year. So it's the first year in a while we could say that. We did a number of future land use map amendments, most of them based on annexations. We had a few small scales and a couple of large scales, and then we also had our first, our phase 1 of the evaluation appraisal report most recently. We had a number of rezonings relative to annexations, of course, and then some of the policy implementation that the commission has worked on and approved with us. The biggest one, probably the overlay district standards, which was a multi-month process that ended with the set of standards that are now enshrined in our code. The small-scale rural event centers, which are now available by special exception through the Commission's approval. Same with the small-scale rural estate subdivisions of 25 units or less, which can be approved by special exception, agricultural zoning districts. New subdivisions, of course, we have the Barrington, which was the small-scale rural estate. And we had Moreland, which is a small-scale downtown planned development. Neither one has broken ground as yet, but they're getting close. We talked to the engineer for Moreland, and they're getting ready to submit their engineering. I'm excited about that. It'll be an interesting new development right in the heart of downtown. Final plat approvals, we did a number of them. Countryway South, Dillon's Grove, Countryway Phase 5. And then additional subdivision phases that were approved. There were so many approved the previous year in 21 that slowed down a little bit because there was a fair amount of inventory for the builders to work on, and so we only approved one actual new phase in 22, which was Avalon Woods Phase 2. And then a bunch of site and development plans, probably the most prominent of which is the Newberry Shopping Center site plan. And then, of course, there's the other various processes that come before you in the planning process. and the inquiries, of which there are hundreds over the course of the year. We can't even keep track of all of them, but a lot of the different types of questions we get, first and foremost, what can I do on my property? And of late, what are they putting next to my neighborhood? And so, those are coming in much more frequently as we continue to grow. And so our goals for the upcoming year, continue to implement the new commercial corridor design standards that you all passed recently. Get that entry-level planner position filled. It's harder than I thought it would be. Tight job market. Conduct the overhaul of the comprehensive plan, which we're working with CHW right now on. Go ahead and once that's complete, implement the land development regulations, which then implement the comprehensive plan. Look for some potentially a consultant to work with us on the CRA in the future. And as you all know, because you approved it, we are also working on implementing a new software program that is going to streamline the planning, project tracking, building department especially, and then also code enforcement. It's going to take all of those and streamline them and make everything available basically online to the residents and to the construction community. Complete the renovations on Little Red Schoolhouse. In this era of shortages and labor shortages, it has been a little bit challenging to keep that moving, but we're getting close. The downstairs is probably about 90+% complete. Within the next couple of weeks, we anticipate the planning department will move downstairs into the new side where the building department used to be, and then we'll get immediately started on the upstairs. Seek out new opportunities for the training and certification staff. We want to always try to stay abreast of what's going on in the planning world, and get all of the applications available online, make them easy to use for the customers. And just as always, continue to streamline processes to make it easier for the development process and keep things moving along without clogging up the works. And with that, complete presentation, Mr. Mayor.
Well, we appreciate it, and we certainly appreciate everybody over in your department, all that you guys do over the course of the year to make sure that we're still growing. We're doing it in a responsible way that protects the character of our community. We can't do that. You guys are on the front line. So with that, I'd like to offer the following proclamation. Whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, suburbs, counties, boroughs, townships, rural areas, and other places. And whereas community planning and plans can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people work and live. And whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their community. And whereas the full benefits of planning requires public officials and citizens who understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation. And whereas the month of October is designated as National Community Planning Month throughout the United States of America and its territories. And whereas American Planning Association endorses National Community Planning Month as an opportunity to highlight how planning is essential to recovery and how planners can lead communities to equitable, resilient, and long-lasting recovery. And whereas the celebration of National Community Planning Month gives us the opportunity to publicly recognize the participation and dedication of the members of planning commissions and other citizen planners who have contributed their time and expertise to the improvement of the city of Newberry. And whereas recognize the valuable contributions made by professional community and regional planners of the city of Newberry and extend our heartfelt thanks to the continued commitment to public service by these professionals, now therefore be it proclaimed that the month of October 2022 is hereby designated as Community Planning Month in the city of Newberry in conjunction with the celebration of National Community Planning Month, adopted this October 10th day of 2022 and attested to by myself, Mayor Jordan Marlowe, City of Newberry. So, Planning Department, thank you for everything. We appreciate you guys. That takes us to presentations, public announcements. And I think we have one item on the consent agenda that perhaps before we approve, we maybe should pull off. We got some people here tonight to celebrate it. Could I get a head nod to pull item 2 off of the American Pharmacist Month proclamation? That'll let me read it right here to the public. I got head nods. Okay. Do you have anybody here from the Pharmacy Association wants to come down and talk to us tonight?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Tim Rogers. I've been a Newberryan since 1975, and all 5 of my kids have gone to Newberry schools. but I'm past president of the Alachua County Pharmacy Association, past president of the Florida Pharmacy Association. I'd like to introduce Newberry's finest pharmacist, Doctors Cecilia Giroux and Olivia Keene. Olivia's at Hitchcock's, and Cecilia's at West End Pharmacy, which is Business of the Year this year, as I recall, isn't it? All right. Yes. And I'd like to thank the mayor and commission for helping us recognize National Pharmacy Month and recognizing what pharmacists really do. Besides putting pills in a bottle, they really are making sure that your doctor's prescribing the right drug for you, that right drug's at the right dose, and it's the appropriate drug for you, and the interactions and all that stuff. Plus, they give you shots if you want to get them. So we take care of you all the way. Mr. Mayor?
I believe I got a shot from one time from each of you this past couple of years, and I didn't feel a thing. It was perfect. Well done. With that, I'd like to offer the following proclamation, then maybe we can grab a photo really quickly. Whereas pharmacists are the most accessible healthcare providers delivering critical services to patients and contributing to the health and well-being of all people. And whereas pharmacists are best positioned to be the healthcare provider that ensures optimal medication therapy outcomes and helps to ensure patients are adherent to their medications and serve as providers during public health emergencies. And whereas frontline providers throughout the healthcare system community during COVID-19 pandemic, pharmacists and pharmacy personnel have ensured the public is cared for even at the risk of exposure. And whereas with a community pharmacy located within 5 miles of nearly all Americans, pharmacists and pharmacy personnel are making an impact to control the spread of COVID-19 in U.S. communities through testing, treatment, and vaccination efforts. Whereas pharmacists are ideally suited to work collaboratively with other healthcare providers in helping patients overcome illness and live healthier lives through chronic disease management and the fully effective use of their medicines. Whereas today there are over 300,000 licensed pharmacists providing care and serving as patient advocates for ensuring access to the best and safest therapy to the patients they serve. And now, therefore, I, Jordan Marlowe, Mayor of the City of Newberry, and on behalf of the City Commission, now proclaim October as American Pharmacist Month and urge all of our citizens to acknowledge the valuable services that pharmacists provide safe, accessible, affordable, and beneficial patient care services and products to all residents and protect the public health of our communities.
Yeah.
We appreciate it. Photo of everybody
You
here.
bet.
You guys are center stage. Right?
Well,
There we
I'm going to pretend this is the
go.
proclamation.
Well, I've got it right here. We don't have to
Let
pretend.
me hold it here,
Yeah.
make a better picture.
Yeah, let's hold up the actual proclamation. There we go. Right? We'll put that over here.
Disregard the sign here.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
I'll get it back to you until
Yeah,
it
we
gets
don't-
signed.
We want it all nice and pretty for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
All right. Thank you all. And with that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Coleman, a second from Commissioner Farnsworth. Let me go ahead and finish this. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Motion passed unanimously. Let me go back to public announcements because we kind of skipped right over it. Any public announcements? This is a 2-minute time. Early in the meeting, your commission sets aside to hear directly from you on any item that's not on the agenda. I didn't mean to usurp it with the pharmacy proclamation. I was excited. Okay, hearing no public. Oh, come on down, sir.
Good evening. My name's Stinson English. I actually live in Gainesville. Just recently moved down here from Atlanta.
All right.
But I just recently put in an application for the planning position. So I just wanted to say.
We just heard there's an opening. So,
Yeah,
all
so
right.
I just wanted to say that out loud and introduce myself, and try to welcome myself into the community. Whether you guys take me or not, I'm here. So
All right.
just want Stinson English. So hello,
Well, welcome to the area and good luck with the application.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for taking the time to introduce yourself. Okay. Any other public announcements? Okay. Seeing none, we've already done consent agenda. That's going to move us to public requests, public hearings, ordinances. Item 6 is a public request for approval of developers agreement between the City of Newberry and M3 Avalon Woods. LLC for Phase 2. We're going to be entering into a quasi-judicial, so when we enter a quasi-judicial, this means the commission will stop being a legislative body and become a judicial board, which means that we have to follow certain rules and adhere to a different standard of decision-making. The primary rule we must follow concerns testimony, and the substantial and competent evidence standard must be met when the judicial board makes a decision. This standard states the following, and I quote, "All public testimony will be taken under oath. Everyone testifying will be subject to cross-examination. All documents and exhibits shall be entered into evidence. The giving of opinion testimony is limited to experts. Closing arguments will be limited to the evidence of record." I'm going to ask the city attorney to read into the record the ordinance. Yes, please do that, sir. It's the developer's agreement. It's not an ordinance. So I don't know. We did that one time before. What did we say would happen at this point?
Mr. Mayor, the developer's agreement does not have a title per se as a ordinance or a, well, I take that back.
I think the appropriate motion at the appropriate time, Mr. Mayor, will be for the city of Newberry to enter into a development agreement number DA-SD 22-02, known as Avalon Woods Phase 2, between the city of Newberry and M3 Avalon Woods LLC, and authorize the appropriate city officials to execute same upon approval.
Perfectly stated, Mr. Attorney. Thank you. Now I'm going to ask the city clerk if you'll swear in the applicant staff. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're here to speak to any quasi-judicial tonight, I'd ask you to go ahead and get sworn in right now, and then we'll do ex parte per item. But if you're here to speak for a quasi-judicial, we have 2 on the agenda tonight. So go ahead and stand up right now, and we'll go ahead and get sworn in. Madam Clerk?
Okay, please raise your right hand. We're going to start on my left and go around the room and state your name for the record, please.
Brian Thomas.
Mike New. John Paul Press.
Jessica Carey. Kristen Miller.
Bill Miller.
Roger Harvey.
Henry Harvey. Carly Evans.
Alan Evans.
Chris Fox.
Logan Pierce. Kathy Eva. Do you hereby swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Yes, you have been duly sworn.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, at this point, I'm going to ask the commission to disclose any ex parte communication, disclose whether any member physically inspected the property. Ex parte communications are any conversations or transmission of information that may have bearing or influence on any member's voting decision. Commissioner Maison?
Mayor Marlowe? No.
No, sir.
Commissioner Martin? Commissioner Farnsworth? Commissioner Clark? Commissioner Coleman? Again, I'm a non-voting mayor, but I have nothing to disclose as well. Now I'm going to explain the order of presentation we're going to follow for every quasi-judicial item before us. As long as no one new enters the room, I won't go through this whole procedure again, but we will follow this procedure each time. We're first going to hear from the staff with an overview. Then the applicant has the opportunity to make a presentation with no time limit. Then we'll hear from the staff and their report and recommendation, also with no time limit. I've not been contacted by anybody wishing to claim a third-party intervener status. That's going to move us to public comment. Any members of the public wishing to speak to this agenda item have 3 minutes to do so. That will take us to cross-examinations. The members' decision-making body through the chair can ask questions of the staff or the applicant or any of the participants. Then we'll hear final arguments from the applicant and the staff. After final arguments, the city attorney will advise decision-making bodies that the law and factual findings must be made to approve or deny the application. Then we'll deliberate the application. After deliberation, a motion will be made to approve, deny, approve with conditions, or table. No tabling, sorry. With that, staff overview.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't believe that the applicant has a presentation. It's, like I said, it's a developer's agreement, so it should flow pretty smoothly. This covers the Avalon Woods Phase 2, which is highlighted there on the monitor. Phase 1A and B and 3 have already been approved. They're going back now to Phase 2. So, again, this particular developer's agreement covers Phase 2 of Avalon Woods. There is an overall developer's agreement which covers the entirety of the development, and then those elements that are outlined in that larger developer's agreement, piece by piece, as the development occurs, each phase will have a piece of the larger development that will be specified in these smaller sub-developers agreements. It implements the Avalon Woods Mixed-Use Development Approval Ordinance, provides for necessary infrastructure for the development at the correct time and place. The associated construction plan will be considered at a future commission meeting. That's not part of this tonight. and will remain in effect until 2037, unless changed by agreement of both parties. And as proposed, the development agreement complies with the approval ordinance as well as the city's land development regulations and comprehensive plan. This developer's agreement covers the specific conditions included in Phase 2. City will be the sole provider of potable water, reuse water if provided, and sanitary sewer. Developer agrees to extend potable water and sanitary sewer to serve the property. If there's an opportunity the city wants to oversize, then the city will pay for the difference in the cost to oversize the facilities. Statement will be made as part of the recorded homeowners association that the development is adjacent to an active recreation facility, and so there will be some potential for lights at night and some noise, and so that'll have to be part of the acknowledgement with the HOA documents. And it outlines permitted uses. The final master plan and required surety when we have a development that's done in phases. Each phase, the plat basically for each phase becomes the final master plan. And so the final plat will meet all the requirements of Chapter 177 of Florida statutes relative to platting. The construction drawings will meet the requirements of the City of Newberry's land development regulations. And final plat will constitute the final master plan for that phase. And prior to the approval, if the developer decides they want to go pull building permits for the houses in this area, they would have to provide a surety agreement. If they choose to build out all of the infrastructure first, then they would not have to do the surety agreement. If they do a surety, it'd be at 120% of the remaining construction cost as certified by the engineer. And it would be, the surety, as always, would be approved by the city attorney prior to presentation to the commission. So staff's recommended action is to approve Development Agreement SD 2202 on first reading, and please announce the second public hearing for October 24th, 2022.
Okay, October 24th. Okay. Okay, and you said there is no applicant presentation?
Yes, sir.
They're not here. Okay, so any member of the public wishing to speak to this agenda item? You have 3 minutes to do so. Seeing no public comments, I'm going to go ahead and skip cross-examinations. Member decision-making body, if you have any questions of staff. Comfortable with the development agreement, Commissioner Maison.
What is this right up here at the top right corner? I don't know. I mean, I guess it's 246 Terrace. Kind of like snakes out and goes over into the, just a question.
I think it's a sidewalk.
Is it a sidewalk?
Yeah.
Right up top?
Yeah. This section right here.
Right there.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that's a point of connectivity to the recreation area.
Sidewalk.
Okay, any other questions? All right. Mr. Attorney, would you please advise decision-making bodies applicable law?
It is substantial and competent evidence.
Sir? Okay, we'll enter into deliberations. If there are no deliberations, I'll have a motion. I have a motion for approval from Commissioner Coleman.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Farnsworth. Any comments or questions on the motion on the floor from the dais? Public comments or questions on the motion on the floor? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. We're still in quasi-judicial. We're going to go through and do ex parte here in a second. Before we begin this quasi-judicial, though, I think it's worth noting before we get into this procedure a couple of things. This is, in my time, the first time that we've had a application at second reading that didn't fulfill the requirements of the conditions that the commission put on during first reading. Now, there is more evidence that's in your backup material, so the applicant has the right to present that new evidence in this procedure, right? And I want to make sure everyone understands that. I think what I would ask of the applicants and our staff, since there's really just this one last point of contention that we need to figure out, let's try to keep our presentation, this has been a well-heard application. We've talked about this an awful lot. We have this one last piece to try to figure out and see if we can figure. So let's try to keep the bulk of our focus on that one last and not rehash everything that we have already. I think this is the fourth, maybe fifth public meeting we've had on this item if you count the P&Z together, right? So with that, I will go ahead and ask for ex parte communication on this quasi-judicial. We've already sworn everybody in. Commissioner Coleman? Commissioner Clark? Commissioner Farnsworth? Commissioner Martin? Commissioner Mazon?
I have none.
Okay, thank you. And that will take us to the ordinance. Mr. Attorney, would you please read the ordinance into the record?
Happy to do so, Mr. Mayor. This is an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, relating to the rezoning of approximately 6.93 contiguous acres, more or less, pursuant to an application by the property owner of said acreage, amending the official zoning atlas of the City of Newberry Land Development Regulations, providing rezoning from the residential single-family RSF2 zoning district to the planned residential development PRD zoning district on certain lands within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida. This relates to tax parcel number 01919-003-004, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. Appropriate motion at the appropriate time will be to pass ordinance number 2022-35, LDR 22-14, as read by title only, and of course you have the ability to continue this to a date certain in the future or deny the passage of the ordinance.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney.
Sure.
I have two items. One, I think this is a typo, and I thought I had corrected it. This is second reading. Right? It's listed in the agenda as first reading. So I just want to make sure we clarify that for the record.
Mr. Mayor, this is second reading.
Second reading. And I believe we have Ms. Lancaster has not been sworn in, so can we pause real quickly? If you're intending to speak, if you don't intend to speak, then you don't need to, but you might do it just in case. Go ahead. If you'd please rise.
Please state your name for the record. Sophie Lancaster. Do you hereby swear affirm the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
And that reminds me, since we had someone new walk in, I do need to read the presentation order over again. First, we're going to start off with staff overview. Then the applicant has the opportunity to make a presentation with no time limit. Then we'll hear the staff's report and recommendation, also with no time limit. I don't have anybody applying to be a third-party intervener, so that's going to take us a public comment. Any members of the public wish to speak to this agenda item have 3 minutes to do so. Then the applicant can cross-examine, staff can cross-examine, members of the decision-making body through the chair can ask questions of the applicant or staff or any of the participants. Then we'll hear final arguments from the applicant and the staff. Then the city attorney will advise decision-making bodies of applicable law and factual findings. Then we'll hear deliberations of the application. After deliberations, a vote should be taken to approve the conditions, continue, or deny the application. All right, now we've checked all of our boxes. We're formally in quasi-judicial. Staff, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. John Paul Perez with the Planning and Economic Development Department. The request before you is a rezoning from single-family to planned residential development. Here's a general location of the property. Here's an aerial of the subject property. The current zoning is RSF2, residential single family. They are requesting for a rezone to planned residential development. This is some of the history to the project that the mayor's suggested or mentioned. Here is the plan presented to approved by the Planning and Zoning Board, presented to the City Commission at the very first reading on July 25th. It was tabled. This is the circulation showing connection to the north and the east, the open space, as well as all the residential lot development that will be proposed there. Now, this is the plan that is moving forward. This is the plan that is being considered tonight. This is the plan that was revised with the reduction of units, and they were proposing that reduced unit count. They did lose that eastern connection. This was approved on first reading with that, provided that they do that eastern connection. However, the applicant has decided to move forward without that eastern connection. Gray is just the circulation. Again, this is the residential. And again, just an overview, it's 12 detached single-family units they're proposing. Minimum lot size is 7,500 square feet. Minimum lot width is 60 feet. Overall density is 1.7 dwelling units per acre, and they are meeting their 50% open space requirement. Just as a reference, the adjacent Newberry Oaks has a density of approximately 2.7. And some rational nexus for the condition for connectivity were provided in the agenda summary. I'm just going to go over them briefly. But both our land development regulations and our comprehensive plan encourage connectivity when possible. And underlined here, they promote an integrated system. They promote reducing the impacts on the state road system, interconnectivity between sites so they don't have to rely on the state road system for small local trips. Unless further extension is clearly impractical or undesirable beyond turnaround, rights of way with the same width as the street shall be carried to the property in such a way as to permit future extension of the street to the adjoining street. So here are some connections within Newberry Oaks. You can see these are connections to exterior or adjacent sites. Here are some cul-de-sacs also in Newberry Oaks. And that completes my presentation. It's at the pleasure of the board to approve conditions or deny the application. And the staff will be loading the applicant application or presentation now. So I'll give her just a moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, JP. Chris, welcome back.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chris Potts, Director of Engineering for JB Pro. So I know there's a bit of frustration from staff and the board about, the size of the project coming back, but, yes, the scale of this project is smaller than most other projects that we have going on in Newberry. And the difference with this is, one, the size of the acreage, and then as well as a local developer, a husband and wife. The wife works here in finance, and her husband is in the military, often overseas, as well as a local sheriff. So from our standpoint, all our clients, no matter their size, are equal to us. And so based on that, we're coming back and asking for the board to reconsider the original condition. We understand John Paul and the city's standpoint of interconnectivity, and I apologize for getting the letter late out on Friday. There was some confusion on the request and timing and that sort of thing. But we wanted to make sure that not only the commission understands the potential impacts to the developer, the additional cost, but also the impacts to Newberry Oaks and the road system within Newberry Oaks. The 7 acres, give or take, is going to produce a maximum 12 lots, which is a de minimis impact to the roadway network in Newberry Oaks as well as the residents. But extending that throughout to larger tracts is actually going to increase the traffic through Newberry Oaks. And so from our standpoint, we're coming in and asking the commission to reconsider, but give them 2 options that the board may choose going forward. So I'm just going to scroll through as the mayor has asked, just to bypass some of the general information that we've gone through before. But I just want to touch on again, how we got to where we are today. So there's just a clear reminder. Before she bought the property, she met with city staff, and the city staff felt that they would be able to support smaller lots as well as the rezoning of the property. And so with that information, she decided to move forward, purchase the property, and hire us to do the planning work for her. And going through it, collectively everybody felt that attached units as well as detached units would be appropriate. to provide a different level of housing and income for the city of Newberry. So we started out at 23 lots with a minimum lot size of 5,000. And then in going through the planning and zoning, there was some contention about the attached units. So we elected to remove those, which decreased the maximum lot count from 23 to 17, and we would only be detached only. And then in our first commission meeting, we heard what the commission said. We increased the lot size, minimum lot size to 7,500 square feet, as well as reducing the lot count again to 12. So I just wanted to remind how we got to the path that we are today. So roadway interconnectivity. Yes, roadway interconnectivity is important, but one of the goals of interconnectivity, as John Paul mentioned, was to alleviate traffic off of State Road. Well, this area is unique where their interconnectivity for all the parcels east and west will not actually alleviate traffic from driving to the State Road. It'll actually just distribute the traffic through Newberry Oaks. So what we decided to do is try to estimate what the parcels to the east from a density standpoint and the number of lots that could be potentially produced. So we took Newberry Oaks, Oak Park, Newberry Corners, Avalon Woods, and Newberry Town Center, kind of averaged the density that we got for all those projects. And most of those are the either established subdivisions or a lot of the larger scale subdivisions going on in town. So the average is about 3.5. So we took that number times the acreage of the parcel to the east and to the southwest, which is highlighted in blue and green, to calculate an estimated number of units that would be produced, as well as the estimated traffic. Now, the importance of the traffic is it's not the number of lots that design a roadway system, it's number of trips that roadway system is going to experience. So the parcel to the east is going to add 661 average daily trips. And I know John Paul mentioned, focusing on the peak hour trips, but when looking at roadway design, you have to pay attention to the ADT, or the average daily trips. And then the parcel in the green would produce roughly 1,000. And so with that interconnectivity to the east, there'd be 660 average daily trips coming through Eden's Garden, which is a 12-unit subdivision, and then coming through Newberry Oaks itself, on top of the additional 1,000 to the southwest, or southeast, in green, which would be coming through Newberry Oaks. So in reviewing pavement design, over on the right, Newberry Oaks was designed several years ago under different standards. And so this little excerpt is just from Alachua County, which I know is a little difficult to see, but with this average daily trips of a little under 4,000, Alachua County recommends a 3.5 inches of asphalt, 10 inches of lime rock with a 12-inch base. So you can see the existing roadway network would be under designed, and then would actually increase the maintenance costs that the city would have to bear for the roadways, with the potential failure. It wouldn't be all at once, but over time, different parts of the roadway could potentially fail because it's not designed to handle 4,000 average daily trips. Now, looking at connectivity, the parcels to the east do have an easement that tie into Newberry Road. However, that connection to Newberry Road is what we call a controlled access. So it only has a right in, right out. DOT would not allow that entrance to become a full median access because it doesn't meet their separation of 1,320 feet from another full access. So in turn, most drivers from those two parcels would not actually drive south to Newberry Road to have to make a right-hand turn, then to make a U-turn to go back into City of Gainesville. They would all just come through either Eden's Garden or the stub that's already to the southeast. So all the traffic is going to end up coming back through Newberry Oaks. So that would be sending roughly another 1,600 trips or so back through Newberry Oaks, which those roadway networks are not designed to handle that amount of traffic. So again, this was the option that we came in with the last commission meeting. We heard the commission. We heard that you guys wanted a roadway connection to the east. So we came up with option 2, which has the roadway connection to the east, but on top of it, the maximum number of lots that we would be able to obtain would be 10. So again, you're asking the developer to drop another 2 lots, plus the additional cost of the roadway and other infrastructure improvements. So we're here to just ask the commission. Our preference would be option 1, but again, it's completely up to the commission. And if you guys would elect to go with option 2, we'd be fine with that. But we just want to make sure that the commission fully understands potential concerns to the infrastructure of Newberry Oaks and the concerns that we've heard from the neighbors is the amount of traffic that continues to go through their subdivision. So in most cases, interconnectivity is good when there's a way to distribute the traffic. But in this case, there's only one point of gaining full access to Newberry Road, and that is the main entrance to Newberry Oaks. So again, we're just, gracefully request the commission to reconsider the condition. Our preferred option would be option 1, but again, if the commission would like us to move forward with option 2, we would do that. So that is all we have. We're here to answer any questions, and we appreciate the board's time.
Thank you, Chris. Before I move on with the quasi-judicial, I want to bring staff back up because it's a little bit unique to have options in a quasi-judicial. The normal procedure is the applicant, here's our question, here's our ask, yay or nay, right? We had a staff report, I believe was only addressing option 1. So staff, can you come back up? And maybe this is a managerial question here about applicants having 2 options inside of one application? Or is this a quasi question? Maybe it's a legal question. I'm not sure. No one's ever done this before where we come forth and we say, here's our application, you guys pick. So could you let staff get to the mic and explain this to me? How is the commission's, you didn't give a presentation on option 2.
No.
Do we have backup material on option 2? Are we ready to make comments on option 2?
All great questions, Mr. Mayor. This is a first for me as well. I've never presented 2 options on a site plan to a voting body before. Staff has reviewed a site plan remarkably similar to option 2. However, I cannot say that we can provide a finding on option 2, but again, it's remarkably similar. The ordinance that's included with the package only considers and addresses the
Option 1.
Well, I will say the site plan under consideration right now. So yeah, this is uncouth, I would say.
Okay, so you want to take a shot at this? Because
I guess.
I'm about to turn it over to Scott here in a minute too. So,
Mr. Mayor, I think, I don't know exactly what our planning procedures say about reconsideration, but I hear what you're suggesting, and after watching all of this tonight, it occurs to me that this could have actually been 2 agenda items. The first is, would you reconsider what you asked us to do in the last meeting, the first public hearing? And yes or no. And if the commission says they would reconsider, then I think they're moving forward with this request. I think the fact that we're doing it in one public hearing now is just, we're rolling up the beginning of would you reconsider? And then if not, then this is what you ask us to do in the first public hearing. So it is unusual, but it occurs to me that it could have been 2 agenda items, the first for reconsideration and then the second for second and final reading.
And I guess this is a question. Go ahead, Chris.
So, Mr. Mayor, one thing with the conditions of the PD, they would all be met and identical. It's just the condition of the roadway connection. So the maximum number of lots, the maximum or the minimum width, the minimum square footage is all identical in the PD ordinance. The only difference is just the PD master plan. So they both comply with the PD ordinance. We're just requesting a reconsideration. But again, if the commission feels strongly that they want to move forward with their original request, then we'll follow that, which is the option 2.
And my inclination is to agree with what you just said, but I guess my legal question is, I don't want the commission to be lulled into a sense of complacency since we have no staff comments on option 2. We don't have any feedback. I feel like we all sort of have talked about this thing so much that we feel like we know what option 2 would look like, but we, in a quasi-judicial, we're supposed to get testimony from the experts on the application in front of us. We have that testimony on one of these, but we don't have it on another one, and I don't want to flippantly say, yeah, but we all know what we're talking about there, so we don't really need to go through the procedure. That's kind of why we have a procedure. So, Scott, make me feel comfortable or validate those concerns.
My suggestion, Mr. Mayor, would be to go forward. As I understand it, the application for, we'll call option 1, or the existing petition is, and of course we had our first reading and there was a condition placed on that. The applicant has come back now and said that the roadway connectivity to the east makes that particular requirement economically not feasible for us. And that's what I see this October 5th letter doing. So my suggestion would be to deal with that matter, which was read by on first reading, and the commission can decide to go forward with it without the connectivity or not. And if we want to go to another procedure, then I think the option 2 is probably substantively different enough that you go back through the process again. So that would be.
You said the one thing that no one in this room wants to hear, but I think I would tend though to agree. So I think what I'm hearing is, let's deal with option 1. That's the application in front of us. Commission will decide. The request would be, if the commission's going to say no, then you got to ask somebody up here to table it so that you guys can come back with an application that's just about option 2. That would give staff the opportunity. I don't think it's appropriate for us to be able to listen to both of those, even though I tend to agree with you that they're going to be the same. That would be substantially breaking our procedure. So, and I don't know that this board is going to be willing to kick this another time, but.
Well, if I may, Mr. Mayor, just to
Go
ask
ahead.
a question to the city attorney. So the original condition was a roadway connection to the east. We're providing additional documentation on that condition. But I guess our thoughts is that if the commission is still wanting to move forward with that condition, that was what their condition was for the first reading. So could they not move forward and say, well, we want to stay with our current condition? This is their second reading of that condition, and that's how we're going to go forward with it.
In other words, could they approve it subject to the connectivity, Chris? That's what you're asking?
Correct.
Yeah, I think they could. And then you're left with a situation which makes a development not feasible. That's what you're basically telling us.
Right, we're requesting, the reconsideration of it, but if the commission wants that connectivity, then we will move forward with it and try to figure out some way to make it economical.
Scott, here's what the closest similarity that I can think of is the commission votes for approval with conditions, but those conditions are left to staff to make sure that the applicant meets the conditions. Things that I think about here, because it's not in the backup material, I'm sure that all this aligns, but width of the road, easements, utilities, all of those kinds of things that go into the roadway. Normally, if that was the application, we'd have comments from staff saying, we have no objection to all this. So I could see this moving forward with the option 1, option 2, and if the commission votes for option 2, there'd be a amendment to the condition that says staff has to make sure that all of those standards are upheld in terms of road width, curbs, gutters, whatever the agreement would be that would normally be the topic of conversation, but isn't because we got backup information on option 1.
Correct. And just, to your point, Mr. Mayor, this is just the zoning component. So we have to come back with development plans to, 1, meet the PD ordinance, and then 2, any conditions that were applied. And then at that point, staff could say, well, you meet all but 1, or, you don't meet them all as the construction plans come through. So staff would have that chance to make sure that the commission's wishes as far as conditions and the PD ordinance are met.
Okay. Legal, you're comfortable with that?
I think we go with what was.
I mean, we're going to deal with option 1 first.
Option
1 first. Then we can come back to this, but I can see a path forward with option 2 saying that we now empower staff to meet all of the conditions that we would know would be in there. Mike, you got any final thoughts on this unusual
Mr. Mayor,
situation?
I want to echo that. Typically, this is a rezoning application. Typically, at the zoning level, we would have that, the zoning map. What did you call it?
Preliminary development.
The preliminary development plan. We wouldn't have approved construction plans. Our LDRs tell them exactly what it has to be, so the commission doesn't have to come back and say 60-foot wide right-of-ways and a 24-foot wide paved surface. It's in our LDRs. So that preliminary development plan map is all that would appear in a rezoning petition. So I don't think that we'll be left lacking anything.
Okay. Madam Clerk, will you remind me where we are in this quasi-judicial? We heard from the applicant, we heard from staff, we heard from the applicant. Are we ready for public comment? Is that where we've got option 1, option 2. We've heard from everyone on that piece. Okay, thank you, Chris. Public comments. Anyone wish to speak to this agenda item? Come on down, make a queue. 3 minutes. Don't be shy, Mr. Evans. You'll just break the seal and get it started.
So this connection is for future development, and they are considering the fact. When our land is developed, thank you, and when WEC is developed, all the way up through, the Ag Tech Park. So I don't know that that's a good argument, but the first thing I want to do was kind of thank everybody here for the time and consideration, all the elected officials and the city staff. And we appreciate the Lancasters' risk they're taking with this business venture. Carly and I are business people, so we do appreciate it. We don't want to shut this thing down. That's the last thing we want to do. Our concerns are, we think it should be realized that there's only one connection from Newberry Oaks that heads east. One connection through all hundreds of houses, and that's 7th Avenue, that will connect to the future development plans to the east, which is WEEC, Ag Tech, Davis's, whatever the Davis's do, our property, which will be developed one day in whole, or at least in part. I don't have a crystal ball, but as we see it, our property value will not be increased by this eastern connection, but the lack of easterly connection could potentially decrease our property value. And we're concerned about that. Again, I don't have a crystal ball. Without any connectivity, it would not benefit anyone in the area. The entire west side of our farm would also be landlocked from all development coming from the west. It's now or never. You're building a wall that can never be connected again. It's for future development that is coming. I just like to remind the commission that our entire west property line is also their entire east property line. I think there's one question we need to ask ourselves: Is this beneficial? This connection is highly beneficial, or is it essential? And that's the question you guys have to ask yourself, I think. I think it's highly beneficial for everybody. Is it beneficial? It could probably be done without it, but it's gonna make a big difference. 5 years from now, people are gonna be going, man, I wish I could get back there without going all the way through 7th Avenue. But this is, of course, up to you guys. Newberry Oaks was told they had to put a connection into the WEEC property. And it's kind of your policy, okay? And so that's pretty much, since my time looks like it's up in 7 seconds.
Well, I asked you about the Dolphins are playing, so that's a 10-second roll off there. So
Okay.
we appreciate your comments.
Well, we do try to put ourselves, Carly and I, in the position of other people when we get into these situations. But the connectivity was something that was discussed over and over and over again and seen as a benefit to Newberry Oaks, to all the future developments that are coming in.
Thank you, sir.
And,
we appreciate you. Other public comment. Come on down, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Jessica Carey. My preliminary question was the last meeting prior to the revisit, when we had reading one, we talked a lot about feasibility, and I think that's when a lot of us neighbors within the community, I live literally around the corner from this proposed development, talked about what the traffic and stuff was going to be, but it was all about feasibility, and they talked about the number of units. And so when I looked at the proposals of the space, I believe, and I may be wrong if I was trying to remember from the minutes, it was either 13 homes or 12 homes would make the project unfeasible. And when I look at option 2, it has 10 homes, is that correct? Right, 10 homes. But it has the connectivity that you request and you put as a condition so that it was the voices of the community members who have purchased and are invested in this community would have a little peace of mind. So I would urge, as someone who lives in Newberry Oaks, to please do option 2. If it means that it's not feasible, I greatly apologize. Money is, especially in these times of inflation, is a concern to all of us. But we also have to think about the future of Newberry Oaks and the future of Newberry. And if the Evans decide to sell down the line because they want to retire and do that, and we do other future developments, then it has that option. But without that option, it does leave a lot of things closed for those of us living in the community. And some of us have, invested and want to stay here for the long term. So I would hope that you would take that in consideration. And thank you again for revisiting this, gentlemen and lady.
Thank you. Other public comments.
Hello, hello, hello. I'm Kristen Miller. I want to thank the Evans, because without them, I would have remained ignorant about stem roads, even though there's one in front of my house. So I want to thank them for bringing that to the attention of people like me that we see them, don't think about them, didn't know what they were. I'm just going to enjoy my retired life and garden until they educated me as to how important it is to do that, to plan for the future. whether it's 5 years from now or 50 years from now. If we know better, we do better. So my preference would be, or my original preference before the Evans was allow the Lancasters to build the way it is. And then after hearing from the Evans and considering that there are other things to be considered, that stem road is important. And to move forward without it when we know better seems to be negligent to me. Regardless, I thank everybody for their for this time together. We've been here about 4 or 5 times, and I wish the Lancasters well in whichever way this goes. And I guess that's it.
Thank you, ma'am. Other public comment. You came out. Might as well let the commission know what you're thinking. Don't be shy. Okay, seeing none. 3, 2, 1. Okay, then we will close public comment and we're going to move to cross-examination. Applicant, Chris, you got anything that you heard that you'd like to cross-examine? You're the applicant, so if you want to cross, is this a closing argument? Because we have closing arguments in a minute. So if you wanted to rebut something that anybody said or that you heard from staff or a participant, now's the time. If you just want to make a final argument, we got that in 1 second.
Okay, it's not a final argument.
We're not at final arguments yet, but we are at rebuttals.
I would just, for the rebuttaling of just the roadway connection, I mean, the property to the north is Alachua County. It's in Alachua County. Additionally, I think the commission should ask the planning staff about their opinions of roadway connectivity. They mentioned at the first meeting that they felt the connectivity in this case was not a necessity. I noticed that the staff did not discuss that. So I think it'd be very important for the board to ask that question to planning staff.
Thank you, sir. Staff, was there anything that you heard that you want to cross-examine? There's a couple of points that I'd like to hear staff comment on. One, the applicant was saying that we supported a smaller or a more dense from the beginning before this project started. My memory was the P&Z approved 16 units, not 17. And then I think that last point is worth discussing as well, which in my memory, somebody, whether it was me or somebody up here, has asked at every single public meeting, staff talk to us about this interconnectivity. I applaud both the applicant, well, I guess mainly just the applicant, because I feel like tonight is the first time we've actually had an expert conversation on the interconnectivity. So, Brian, can you address at least those three, and then anything else that you heard that you'd like to?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Okay, as far as the initial conversations we had in this Lancaster staff, it's in terms of who the staff was, because Jean-Paul hadn't come on yet, talked with her about different ideas, different possibilities for the property. We talked about the unusual nature of the property and that several acres are taken up by the easement for the power transmission lines. We talked about the difficulty in designing for the shape of the parcel, because it's got two very acute angles that are hard to incorporate into some kind of feasible design, those kind of issues. And one of the things we talked about was, would there be any possibility to try to change the zoning so that, not necessarily to increase the density, because as we talked about before, if you went by gross density, it would be something like 28 units potentially on 7 acres, but to allow them to have smaller lot sizes so that they could then get enough units in there to make it a financially feasible project. And so those were how the discussions went with that. And, I told her in general, I thought that it would be something staff could get behind, because a little bit extra density is not going to make a substantial change, in my opinion, to the larger lot sizes, which were 150 feet on the other side of a, pretty sizable buffer provided by the Duke Power easement. So that was sort of the initial conversations that we had, where we talked about higher density, not in changing the land use or zoning to allow for higher density, but changing the zoning that would allow for a little bit smaller lot sizes to get a few more lots in there to make it a viable project. And your second question, I'm sorry.
It's not, I just wanted the record to show, because one of the things that I think has been frustrating for residents and myself is that from meeting to meeting, numbers and information shift slightly, right? And the P&Z, because I'm the liaison, motioned for 16 units and the interconnectivity, and I just want to make sure that we hopefully as we're coming to the end of this, we're finally in agreement on the steps of the process. So I don't guess there's really cross-examination there. The last one was, I have asked this question before. I'll ask it again, right? Because I think it speaks to what Chris is talking about. A staff did initially say, we don't need the interconnectivity. It was the P&Z who first said, hey, we think there's interconnectivity. We had a conversation up here. That night it got tabled, but this board agreed on the interconnectivity. But we've never really had a conversation, and it's put the P&Z and the board in the position of falling back on previous years of coaching, right? Hey guys, we want to encourage as much connectivity as possible. But we've never really heard expert testimony. Now we have one set of expert testimony tonight that's pretty compelling about road wear and maintenance and those kinds of things. I'd like to hear other expert testimony, and I have never at any point in time tried to muzzle anyone, right? I want staff to give their opinion. I want the applicant to give an opinion, but it needs to be an expert opinion. So what is staff's expert opinion on whether if we need that connectivity or not? And I understand we're in a policy, so it's always good to have, right? There's a difference between good to have and necessary.
Mr. Mayor, in general, we do believe it's always good, but it isn't always practical. And again, kind of owing to the unique nature of this property, staff didn't really feel like, for a couple of reasons, didn't really feel like that it was practical to require adjacent connectivity to a parcel to the east. Again, a lot of that owing to the uniqueness of this particular parcel and the difficulty in developing it into a viable project. And then also, as well, the Evans property has other potential points of connectivity, and so we didn't think adding yet another one was necessarily a burden that should be placed on a small-scale developer, when there are several other possible opportunities through the WEC property, potentially through the Ag Tech Park, and through the this primary point of whatever the primary point of ingress and egress becomes, if ever in the future, for the WEC property. In general, I think the numbers presented by Mr. Potts for the overall impact, if WEC were to develop in the future, would basically be pretty spot on. The impact that this particular one would have would be on the smaller side, potentially, if the Evans property developed. Then you're looking at maybe 600 to 700 trips a day through a very small conduit, being the Lancaster development, the Eden's Garden development. And so for those reasons, staff really didn't feel, although in general we do always encourage connectivity, didn't necessarily feel like it made a whole lot of sense in this particular application for those reasons.
Okay, thank you, sir. Was there anything else staff wanted to cross-examine? Okay, that's going to take us to Mayor's decision-making body. Do we have questions of the applicant or staff? Commissioner Martin.
Oh, no, I was on comment.
Any questions about the application? This is the point that we've been trying to find out, so Commissioner Clark.
Yeah, so number one, with the engineer, Mr. Potts, the way he broke that down was the first time we've actually seen a engineer study on anything, and it was my understanding that the Newberry Oaks didn't want any more traffic through their area. So why would you want a connectivity? And number one, the roads can't handle it. So that's, and I understand the Evans also, but my point is the burden financially is going to be on the city with repairing all these roads. with this amount of trips a day. If the Evans develop and the WCE develops, this is, the board's going to have to decide where roads are going to get fixed. So that's what I got on that.
Thank you, Commissioner Maison. I thought you were
Agree.
reaching for the mic.
Agree. Well said.
Other commissioner comments about any questions, not comments, questions about roads handling? Commissioner Clark, you got one more?
One more. So I want to be clear that the staff has not said that there is a policy for connectivity. There is just a want when we do these things. Is that correct?
I think let's be careful about our answer there. Because
I've heard this in too many
Right.
ways.
Let's
I want to
make-
know, is there
Yeah.
a policy or is there just a want when we do this?
Mr. Mayor, I believe that there are some places in our land development regulations that speak to connectivity, but I don't believe that there is anywhere in the language that says it's an absolute or a requirement.
To
Mr.
expand
Manager.
on that, I think that there is a policy about connectivity, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we would connect to every parcel that is contiguous to a development. And generally, I would say that after looking at hundreds of developments, that it's impractical and not feasible to connect to every adjacent parcel. We try to look at it and be smart about where we require connectivity. And you can see from what we saw previously, when Newberry Oaks was originally contemplated, there was connectivity to the north, which is unincorporated. There's connectivity to the east, and then there were road connections to the south and to the west. So I'd say that's very typical of what we do with subdivisions. Is we try to make sure that we're having those connectivity opportunities. But we don't look at an individual parcel and say, well, we got to make sure that each one of these parcels gets a roadway stubbed out to them, because it becomes impractical.
Okay, so the difference between, the way I see it, I mean, JP had 4 or 5 different places in our code that speaks to connectivity, but then we bring that code to each individual project and we say, do we have enough? Is it practical? Those kinds of things. So I would say, yes, we do have a policy of connectivity where feasible, right? But it's not a mandate that every single time, right? Okay, other questions of the applicant or staff? All right, that's going to take us to final arguments. Ms. Sophie, now, final argument. Would you like to make it, or are you going to delegate to Chris?
I just do it.
Applicant can make, so you can have your part, and another person in the application can have their part.
Okay, so Sophie Lancaster. Again, thank you all for the opportunity to speak on this project. I know I've stood here quite a few times, and thankful that at least we had the 12 lots approved. And I know it's been a process of compromise on our part, as you know, whether the lots were from 23 to 16 and then to 12, and then now coming with the possibility of losing the 12. And in my address, I think that I've heard what the neighbors have said time and time again, which was that they did not want the traffic to come through their neighborhood. And we've heard passionate expression about basically why they didn't want more lots to be in Eden's Garden. And so with that compromise, we went all the way down to 12 lots, which is what we found to be feasible. And then yet to be able to stand here and understand that the connectivity is going to allow a larger development. We're just 12 homes. And again, we're not a developer, a family. Newberryans been here since 2005. And looking at what is being proposed as far as the connectivity being something that would bring more traffic. And for me, I just went, I'm like, okay, why did we come down all the way to 12 if we're going to allow for larger traffic to come through, the 600 trips or more? And so I guess in my passionate standing or expression of my position, I do appreciate Chris and the team for developing an option 2, but the option 1 is the only thing that is feasible for us. And in it, I guess I just appeal to the sensibility, the expert opinion that we have heard from the beginning when they said that even with the 16 lots, that the roads could sustain the fire and rescue would be able to come in and out and support those 16 units. But because, the neighbors weren't happy with that number, we decreased it to 12. And here we are at a place where I felt like the neighbors were happy to reach that compromise, and now the possibility of a larger development is now being considered that would be allowed to go through this neighborhood. So to me, it's like, it's a little bit frustrating, honestly. And I hope that you would reconsider that option 1 that we have, because when I see why I've stood here time and time again, it was to make sure that we would have the number of lots that would allow those that are neighbors in Newberry Oaks feel comfortable with the traffic that would be in that community. And so I guess this is my appeal, this is my statement, and I hope that, you've heard me. Thank you.
Thank you. Does that conclude the applicant's final argument? Staff, would you like to make a final argument? Come on down, JP.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Again, John Paul Perez, Planning and Economic Development. Option 1 is what Sophie Lancaster is requesting be approved tonight. It is an old practice, not commonly done today, but in the past there have been many platted unimproved right-of-ways that still guarantee that future connection without placing the burden of cost of improving that right-of-way at that particular moment. So you could have that right-of-way connection without all the additional costs that would, according to the letter we received on Friday from the applicant's agent, create an undue burden on them and make the project not economically feasible. Something to consider. I believe a three-way intersection would work there in the future, and that is another option that I think would kind of work for everyone.
That still costs the 2 lots, though, because you can't build there.
That's the question.
It just means that this developer doesn't have to put the infrastructure in.
Correct.
Right now. And it kind of leaves open the question of who would be responsible for that 10 years from now, 15 years from now, 20 years from now.
Correct.
Okay, which is part of the problem with this project now. If the previous developer had stubbed out, then some of these issues would be mitigated.
Correct. You are not wrong, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, all right. Thank you. Mr. Attorney, I feel like we need to make sure we understand the advice that you're about to give in a more comprehensive way than usual.
Sure. The criteria of substantial and competent evidence is those people that have a specialized expertise in a certain area. That comes from education. So when Brian was giving his presentation earlier on in the meeting, he said, I'm AICP designated, that's American Institute of Certified Planners. John Paul carries that designation as well. So that indicates to you that there is specialized training. Chris has that specialized training as well. He's an engineer, a little different education background. But it doesn't mean also that you leave your common sense at the door. So you get to make a determination based upon that testimony from the experts, and that allows you to accept opinion testimony from those people. Now, opinion testimony can come from residents as well. For example, if I own property, I'm able to talk about what the value of my property is. If I'm an adjoining neighbor, I could give you an opinion. At least you may accept it, you may weigh it greater or lesser. So right now, what you should make your determination based on is all of the testimony that you've heard from the experts. You should listen to the citizens that have also testified in this proceeding, the prior meetings that we've had, as well as the current meetings. And I would note, it appears that staff and the applicants are pretty well aligned. So the people that have the designations behind their names, they seem to be speaking in unison to an understanding of where we're at, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Now we'll enter into deliberations. Questions? Anyone want to start us off? Commissioner Martin.
When I've kind of looked over this over the last couple of months or so, my position is to advocate for the applicant to move this forward. I feel like we've kicked it back and forth long enough, and let's go ahead and get it moved forward. But the last meeting, we did have the condition for the connectivity. I also don't think it's fair and advocate for the existing residents and advocate for them that I would personally want to maintain that position. So I wanted to keep the connectivity because of that. And sort of the impact on the traffic internally within Newberry Oaks is what I feel like the connectivity is sort of helping to try to alleviate. Because there's really only, if you look on this map, there's only really one point in that whole back section in the front and one in the back. So an additional one in there I think is beneficial. And more than that, it's important for me to make sure that we're not hamstringing a future commission on what they can do later on. I understand the whole idea of the DOT with that connection, but that doesn't mean that's going to be the only connection out there, because there could be other connections that go out through the Ag Tech Park and those sorts of things. There's an element of it was mentioned about the fire truck or the ambulance or whatever getting in there. And I don't think that's an issue, but I do sort of have a little bit of a fallback thought with regards to having multiple places for the ambulances or fire trucks to get in or out. So I'd like to move the project forward on behalf of the applicant, but I still want to at least maintain my thought that we had about advocating for the connectivity.
Okay, other deliberations. Commissioner Maison.
Yeah. Well, I would like to move it forward without the connectivity, because there is a future connectivity off of 233rd Terrace there. There's like 5 here. 233rd, 7th, I believe. Those are 2 future going to the back corner over there. So listening to the residents that lived in the neighborhood, like Clark said, at first they didn't want traffic going. They felt that the houses that we built back there would bring traffic into the neighborhood. By doing that interconnection, which is what you're proposing, will bring you, even if it's 15 more, even if it's 10 more, it's more than what you'll have back there on top of the 12 that I would like to have back there. I don't think it's that many, honestly. So I would like to move forward without the connectivity, given the 12 homes. And I'm totally interested in seeing what the builders will build. Something different, something Newberry hasn't seen yet, and I'd love to see more of it.
Commissioner Clark. Okay, any other? We've got one who likes option 1, one who likes option 2. This project is proceeding just the way it has so far. Commissioner Clark, we need to hear some.
Are you asking for a vote on the option?
No, I'm here. This is deliberations, so we need to hear what are we before we get to a motion, because once you start making a motion, it gets serious. So this is our chance to talk about it and make a pitch. I agree with what you said earlier. This is the first time we've been asking for the interconnectivity based on how we've been coached since the P&Z. Tonight's the first time we got expert testimony based on it, and I agree in a way with Commissioner Maison as well, because from the P&Z to tonight, the residents have said, I mean, at the P&Z, it started out, they were against duplexes. They didn't want, right? So we got rid of the duplexes, how we got to 16. Everybody left that night, I thought, with pretty good feelings. Then it became about density. Then it became about traffic, right? And if it is about traffic, then I think Commissioner Maison's making a good point. That connection brings in, if there is no connectivity, then 12 houses is the last houses that are going to be driving in and out, right? If there is connectivity, then potentially, if that land develops, you have much more traffic coming through. So I think there's two sides to that coin there, which is exactly what we're deliberating right now. And we do have some participants who've been here. I hate to ask any one person to speak on behalf of the neighborhood, and ultimately, I think it would be inappropriate because this commission's job is to listen to the experts about whether or not this is going to cause, we've heard everything from these 10 houses are turning us into California, and we're going to be overpopulated after 10 houses, to the other end of the apocalyptic spectrum. I don't know what the other end of California is. But our job is to listen to experts. Do we need connectivity here? Is it necessary? Is it feasible? What will that look like at the end? Commissioner Clark, you had reached for a mic. That's why
I did. So I'll just go back to it. When we started this project, nobody wanted traffic. We have went from 20-something homes to 12. This gives no traffic. It does not give the Evans their connectivity to their property. But it is my understanding there are a lot more places to come in here, and I understand it. But let's go back to one thing here. This project don't move forward. This project's been bought. It is RSF2 zoning. It can either be a nice subdivision or we can have mobile homes. So, I mean, that's just the bottom line here. There's more to this than meets the eye. There's 9 different things on here according to the current zoning. So I'm with it without the connectivity, with 12 homes done.
Commissioner Coleman.
Well, I lived in Newberry Oaks. And the thing of it is, you build a subdivision, the Evans built a subdivision in there, right there. Whatever looks like it's the best way to hurry up and get out of there, that's the way they're gonna go, especially if you're gonna go over to 235. You know what I'm saying? I mean, they're going, oh, let's just go through the neighborhood. And traffic's already a nightmare during the day in there. I've been yelled at, screamed at, and all kind of things over the traffic and the speed bumps in there, trying to make everybody happy, but it never worked. So the way I've looked at this is, when that subdivision is built, you're just gonna add more problems. There's gotta be a stopping point to where you're not adding more cars. Let's just go through the little neighborhood here and kick it on out. So I'm happy with option 1. I don't think we gotta have the connectivity there. Cause there is 2 other places right below it where they can be able to connect, so that's where I'm at on this.
Okay. Commissioner Farnsworth, you're the only one who hasn't weighed in. You got an argument you want to?
No, I agree with option 1. I think that once that other area is developed, that low connectivity, like Commissioner Coleman says, is just going to be a thoroughfare on where they build 50 homes and there are 200 homes, but that's going to increase the traffic into Newberry Oaks immensely. So I'm okay with option 1.
Okay. Are there any more deliberations? If not, then I'll have a motion.
Motion
to approve.
To approve option 1.
Okay, I have a
and
motion.
See these beautiful homes that they're going to build.
From Commissioner Maison and a second from Commissioner Cole. Okay. Any comments or questions on the motion on the floor from the dais? Okay. We'll go back to the public comments or questions on the motion on the floor.
We're listening to the
Restate your
experts.
name.
Alan Evans.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, sorry. And, I made the point that, is it essential or beneficial? I think that you guys as elected officials should be listening to the community too. I think it would be highly beneficial. I don't think it's essential. It's not going to make or break us. So I don't want anybody to feel like that's going to happen. But you're talking about traffic issues. Now, everything you're building and doing has one way to go west, and that's 7th Avenue, instead of dividing that into two. If you're trying to alleviate traffic, it's not a bad way to go. I mean, you got one way from Newberry Oaks now to everything that's being built to the east, and that's through 7th Avenue. And it's something to consider. Now, is it going to make that big of a difference in the long run? That's what all these people are here for. I'm just giving you my opinion. And we're trying to be open and honest with it. It's not going to add, we're not trying to get a property value thing. We do have other ways that we've looked at for years with the staff through WEEC, and there was a three-party contract that we were working on at the time to give us other accesses. And that's one of the things I'm trying to get out here, is that there are going to be other roads to alleviate traffic. I think this connection would be very beneficial, but because of the road network that I know is kind of, and at least in people's minds with these developments. So I know Carly has some special ones.
Thank you, sir. Other public comment.
Did we get a chance to get up?
Hang on, come right. You still got a minute, so come on back. But you gotta say it into the microphone for the record.
So do we have a chance to come up after the motion and talk? Because
Not-
Carly was kind of wanting to, her part in this was going to kind of direct to the Lancasters for some consideration for our farm if this thing does not connect.
There's not afterwards, and right now you would only be able to direct comments to us. But I think that's a perfect conversation for you guys to have over a cup of coffee between the two of you. We still have, what's the next step of this, Mike? We're not in, we still have site developments, right? We still have lots of steps for those kinds of conversations to happen. This is just the zoning.
Well, I had talked to Brian earlier, and he felt like this would be a good time to bring some of the stuff up that we were going to bring up. But I don't understand how the process works. You're here all the time, so that's why I was asking.
I understand. All right. Other public comment. Other public comment? Seeing none, we'll come back to board. Anybody else have any more thoughts? I just want to address, because I absolutely 100% agree with Mr. Evans. Connectivity is always beneficial, right? It's always beneficial to put Schedule 40 PVC instead of thin wall. But sometimes you have to make those decisions about feasibility and those kind of things. We would love the streets to be paved with gold. We would love all kinds of things. But the question here is it fair? Is it feasible? And that's what we're deliberating right now. So I didn't want to let that comment go, because I agree with you, but it's that, how do we balance between always beneficial and fairness to everybody involved? If there are no further questions and there is no more public comments, roll call vote. Commissioner Mazon?
Absolutely.
Commissioner Martin?
No.
Commissioner Farnsworth?
Yes.
Commissioner Clark?
Yes.
Commissioner Coleman?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-1. Commissioner Martin in dissent. Thank you for everybody for your extended patience as we worked through this process. Nobody can say that Newberry doesn't care about 12 house development just as much as we care about a 1,500 house development, because we've talked about this one quite a bit.
Horse still alive.
All right. And that takes us to nope. We're on item 8, right? Dallas? Loan application
What kind of shirt is
amendment. Go get us that money, Dallas.
This is a much less controversial item. I just want to borrow $1.8 million. Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners, tonight before you is a resolution to amend our current SRF loan as related to the wastewater treatment plant. The request is to amend the loan amount by $1.7 million to get us through the next phase of our wastewater treatment plant expansion project. Current interest rates are about 2%. And with us tonight, we have Justin DeMello from our engineering firm, if you have any technical questions or other questions.
Well, that was a very short presentation for $1 million of loan. Any questions?
I do need the resolution read into the record.
What's that?
I do need the resolution title read.
Okay, go ahead and do that while we think of some question to make this sound really good before we borrow that much money. Go ahead, Mr. Attorney.
Yes, sir. This is Resolution 2022-70, a resolution of the City of Newberry, Florida, relating to the State Revolving Fund Loan Program, making findings, authorizing the loan application, authorizing the loan agreement, establishing pledged revenues, designating authorized representatives, providing assurances, providing for conflict, severability, and an effective date. The appropriate motion is passed Resolution 2022-70 upon its reading by title only.
Thank you, sir. Any questions? Come on, fellas. If there are no questions, I'll have a motion to approve Resolution 2022-70. I have a motion from Commissioner Farnsworth.
Second.
Second from Commissioner Maison. Any comments or questions on the motion on the floor? Ladies and gentlemen, if you're watching at home, we have to have this money, so I'm not trying to be flippant. We've had lots of workshops and budgets about this. Commission's well prepared for what this looks like in the budget season. We've gone very slowly into this. If there are no comments or questions, I have a motion probably seconded on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. That takes us to item 9, which is Charter Officer Evaluations. Dallas, I don't know where you're going. Come on back. This is the special time of year we all look forward to, where we evaluate our charter officers. For those of you watching at home who may not be familiar with the process, according to Newberry's charter, Madam Clerk, Ms. Judy over there, our manager, Mr. New, and our attorney here. These are our 3 charter officers that work directly for these 5 commissioners up here. I'm a non-voting mayor. They work for the commission. These 3 people work for the commission. Everybody else in the city of Newberry works for the manager. Mr. Walker's got a whole firm of people, and Ms. Judy has 1 employee under her, but the bulk of the city employees work under the manager. So they evaluate their folks. This commission evaluates those 3. In our never-ending quest to make these evaluations more useful, more relevant, Dallas has worked very diligently to not only align these evaluations with our visioning session that we did with the community, to make sure that we are doing what the community wants us to do as we move forward, but also to make them more relevant, because in the past, our evaluations have been the same for pretty much the same, like 98%, for the clerk, the manager, and the attorney. And it's my belief that the commission has a very different set of expectations from our clerk than we do from our manager, than we do from our attorney. So you have with you now 2 evaluations, one for the clerk and one for the manager. And they should be somewhat specific to those charter officers. When we get to the attorney, it's an interesting situation because we don't interact with the attorney on a daily basis in the same way that we interact with the clerk or the manager. So it was very difficult to write a series of questions for the attorney that would be relevant to your interactions and expectations from the attorney. So what I'd like to do is put the attorney on pause, right? The attorney's evaluation on pause. Ask our manager, who does have a daily interaction with the attorney, to give us a report on that. And then we'll come back to how we evaluate Scott as a charter officer later when we have some more data and we have more time to figure out how to go about that in a significantly relevant manner. Okay? Did I take all of your thunder, Dallas, or do you got anything? Forget anything? Miss anything?
No, sir, Mr. Mayor. The only thing I would clarify is I only have given you 1 evaluation. I didn't get too specific into the differences. Looking for feedback from the commission on if this form is what you'd like to use, or if you want any changes. Evaluations from city staff are due by the end of the month for all other city employees. So we are kind of aiming towards having these completed in October. I did also provide you a copy of your vision, mission, and core values straight out of your strategic plan as well. But other than that, just looking for feedback if this is how you guys want to proceed, or if there's any changes you want to make to the evaluation form.
And the evaluation will still have bearing on merit pay increases. It'll be linked to the number of exceeds expectations, meets expectations. So staff will still go through and numerically figure out, right? And the top will be X percentage of exceeds expectations, right? So that there will still be a connection there. But hopefully with this, there's the staffer, the charter officer answers a question, and then you can read their answer and try to have a little bit more of a dialogue with them about specific things. Commissioner Martin, were you reaching for the mic?
Mr. Mayor, I personally didn't get
Last
it.
year's was 18. Yeah, pared it down.
Do I have the floor? No. I actually didn't get a chance to really take a deep dive into this. I'm sure it's probably fine. I honestly kind of take these evaluations with a little bit of a grain of salt. I understand the value in them from a documentation standpoint, but if I had some discussions that I had to have with one of the charter officers, I'd have those in person ahead of time. Things like this would never be a surprise as far as my thoughts go.
Okay, so we need to have it done by the end of the month. If you want to give feedback, we can change it. Otherwise, Dallas, when will we have the clerk-specific, manager-specific evaluations to the commission?
If the commission doesn't have any specific feedback and what they'd be looking for in either of their evaluations, I could have it by the end of the week. We just carry forward a lot.
I'd say let's run with it, right? So it's a new, we've done a slightly different evaluation every single year, so we'll try one more crack at it and see if we can get to something that we can use, that our officers can use as constructive criticism, good feedback, that kind of a thing. And you'll start getting reminder texts from me. When do we name it? When's the deadline?
Last Thursday of October, which
because we need it in order to figure out the merit pay, right? So we have to figure out in order to figure out the raises, we need something. And just as an explanation, as a non-voting mayor, I do not fill out evaluations because those could change the percentage and breakdown. I agree with Commissioner Martin. I think all of us up here have hard conversations behind a closed door, and we give that feedback. But this allows us to codify it and document it and those kinds of things. So, but it's only valuable if we actually go in it and, mix it up a little bit, those kinds of things. So I'll start hounding you guys towards the end of the month about getting it, and you'll have it emailed or hard copies by the end of the month. And people, I know some of you are having struggles with email, so would you prefer to just come through the drive-through and pick up a packet of hard copies?
I'll email them to the commission, but if anybody wants a hard copy, we can.
Okay, I know Ricky wants a hard copy in the drive-through. Commissioner Mazon wants a hard copy. Commissioner Farnsworth. Everybody but Tim wants a hard copy. Okay. Right? So, and it's great. They'll put it on an envelope, drive through, say, hey, I'm here for my evaluation. Yeah.
And then you can just turn them back in either to the mayor or anybody in HR.
You can, I'm glad to take them, but you can cut the middleman out and give it straight to the HR's office. I'm glad to come to your house, pick it up. Anything that gets it to us. He's at 10 o'clock at night. Come on over. Okay. Anything else, Dallas, on chart? We're good. All right. That takes us to new item 10, which is resolution 2022-71. Scott, will you go ahead and read that? I don't know if it's in your backup materials, a last minute addition. Do you have a copy of it, Brian? Thank you. Oh, I have a copy of it somewhere, but I have stacks of paper down here.
Mr. Mayor, this is resolution 2022-71, SP 22-01, a resolution in the city of Newberry, Florida, approving an application SP 22-01 for a special permit to allow the sale and consumption of alcoholic beverages on city-owned and/or maintained property, specifically the Easton Newberry Sports Complex located at 24815 Northwest 16th Avenue, pursuant to Section 6-5 of the City of Newberry Code of Ordinances during a fall festival during October 15, 2022, providing for certain permit conditions to protect the public safety and welfare, repealing all resolutions in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass Resolution 2022-71 upon its reading by title only.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Attorney.
Yes, sir.
Brian, take it away. Heavy on the explanation of what happened, why the emergency.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, basically, I hope the commission does not hold this against the applicant because the applicant turned the application in timely when staff had requested it. Staff simply apparently put it aside, and it came to our attention today that it had happened. And that's it.
Exactly.
Fortunately, it is an item that does not have to be, a code does not require any advance public notice of any kind, and it doesn't have to be advertised as part of the agenda. And so there was the opportunity to go ahead and get it on the agenda tonight. And the emphasis is for, because next Saturday is when the event is going to occur that the applicant needs the special permit for. So with that, it is an application by Greenfield Preschool to allow for a consumption and sale of alcoholic beverages, specifically beer, wine, and hard seltzer, which I understand is about the same potency of beer or wine. The event is to be held Saturday, October 15th. The alcohol sale would only be from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. In the evening of the festival. There is a site plan attached which shows the area that will be designated specifically for alcohol consumption. No alcohol will be permitted outside of that area. And the Easton Newberry Sports Complex. There's the area drawn in there that they intend to have roped off for the consumption.
Brian, is that the tent or is that the area?
That's the tent. I'm not sure if the area is going to be.
I mean, we did this, this may be
It does say tent.
Before some of the commissioners signed, but we did this with Main Streets for a couple of years for the fall festival, and we allowed alcohol, but it was in one section, and they had to like caution tape around it and sort of separate it out, and it was a flop because it sort of made if you bought a beer. You had to go like stand in a corner and drink it. And it made everybody feel like they were a criminal, they were doing something bad, and so nobody really utilized it because when you're at a festival, what you want to do is buy a beer and then walk and look at the tents and stuff. And so if that is the tent that I understand it, if that's the area, then I think you're just going to make people psychologically feel like they're a drug addict or something, like they're being put in a corner.
Mr. Mayor, I actually don't have the information to answer that question, but the applicant is here.
The applicant's here, so they can tell us.
Once that presentation is over, I'm sure she'd be happy to elaborate.
Can you come down and tell us, is this something that I'm going to be able to purchase? And
so my thoughts are you would purchase there because we were just going to have a little area near the food because we have a bunch of food vendors and then popcorn, cotton candy, and hopefully just a beer tent. And then our festival is typically designated to the back area of Easton, so not in the ball field, but where the pavilion is, and then back there on the little patio area. So it's still designated to an area, and we were hoping that they can just kind of mingle through that little area where the fall festival typically is held, which is in the back of the complex between that and the ball fields.
I mean, I'm fine with an area contained, but I think the area should be the whole festival.
Right, and
that's what it is?
That's the intention,
Okay,
yes, sir. But I thought it was asked for me to show where the sales would be, so we would sell from that area, and then we were hoping to be able to just kind of let them mingle through the festival, which is in the back of the complex.
And then how much is a beer or wine or a hard seltzer?
So it depends. I actually have not purchased any yet because I was waiting for approval before I went and did that. Once we figure out how much it costs, obviously we upcharge us a little bit to cover the bartender that's providing her services, but it'll be minimal.
Well, I mean, I asked that question because if people are buying $2 beer, then they have an intent to consume a lot.
Sure.
When people are buying $5, $6, $7 beer, then the idea is to have a good time, imbibe, but not over imbibe. So I actually prefer when people tell me I'm selling craft beer and it's $6 a beer,
So
that
our
tells
plan,
me we're not getting drunk.
Right. So our plan from that we spoke to with the bartender is hard seltzers, some craft beer, some of the domestic beer, and then wine as well, a red and a white option. Similar to, I got the idea, truthfully, from when Hardwood and Honey did one of their sip-in shops. And so I thought that was a really cute idea. And parents have always said, you know, I would just like to have a beer while walking around at the festival and we're just having a nice time. That's simply what it is. And so the bartender, mentioned we just purchase them and then you upcharge. They'll be anywhere from $4 to $7 depending on what we purchase.
Okay. If you've ever watched some of the establishments around here that I don't know that they still exist, but they used to sell like 99-cent Natty Light.
No.
And there was only one reason people were going there. So generally what I tell people when they have objections to microbreweries or something coming to town, if you go to a microbrewery, you're paying $6, $7 a beer. You're not there to drink 4 or 5. You're there to drink 1 or 2, socialize with your friends, have a nice, relaxed time. So,
correct.
That's a different type of beer, though. Natty Light, I was 20 of them would be all right.
Well, we're not serving Natty Light.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Sorry.
No Natty Light.
You go just saying, you go to a brewery, that's
Right.
a little different. You
Yeah.
want to drink 1 or 2.
Well, I mean, I'm hoping that the domestics will be local, craft, interesting.
We're gonna
you know.
try.
Nobody drinks Bud Light anymore, right?
I don't know about that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, some
Well,
people
we
had
also
COVID.
the food vendors and the safety patrol selling Cokes and waters and those kinds of things if you choose that instead. So safety patrol is selling non-alcoholic beverages to raise money for their Washington D.C. trip.
And who's regulating purchasing and like heading to the back of the park? Is there fences? Are there staffers kind of watching to make sure that people don't? Because I like the idea of the whole festival being encompassed. Do we have any other games going on that day? I just want to make sure people aren't walking over to the Little League game.
So from what I understand, that particular day and time, that time frame, there is not anything else happening. I don't know if maybe there's something small and random, but there's no actual, like the softball, baseball games. It's not hosting the, what do you call it, the game day where Newberry hosts all the teams. So
all right.
city staff has approved that day because there was nothing else scheduled happening on those fields.
Okay. Any other? Did I hit them all? Commissioner Martin.
Hey, Jamie, first of all, thank you for everything you do here in town.
Thank you, sir.
You're a great business to have here
Thank
with
you.
us.
Thank you.
Yes. Have you confirmed Wandering Spirit's own insurance policy?
Yes, sir. I actually, if it wasn't included in that, okay, so that's one of the pieces I got from her late, but I do have that also on file.
Okay.
Other questions, comments? Commissioner Clark does drink, so when he shows up at the festival, only serve him water.
Close down, boy, close the bar down.
Yeah. Anybody else? Thoughts, comments? We have a precedent. We did approve alcohol at a previous event out at Easton. It was just like this, one time contained. If not, we've read the resolution
Motion.
into the file, into the record. I have a motion for approval from Commissioner Maison. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second from Commissioner Martin.
No 5.
Any comments, questions, motion on the floor from the dais? Public comments, questions, motion on the floor? Hopefully this is a precursor to our own sip and shop ordinance that will be coming forth soon. Hearing no more comments, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. That takes us to comments. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Want to remind our elected officials that the chamber banquet, the annual chamber banquet, and I think it's the first
Newberry
chamber banquet,
Notables.
Newberry Notables, first one in a little while, is October the 20th at 6 p.m. Clark Plantation. Commissioner Clark, if you need directions, let me know. We'll get you a map on how to find Clark Plantation. The city is providing tickets for elected officials that would like to attend. If you want your spouse to attend, let me know, and we can get that extra ticket for you. But as you guys already know, that you'll have to purchase your spouse ticket. Same for staff. So that's coming up. It's going to be an exciting event, and hope you all are able to attend. Want we did Movie in the Park, or we didn't do it necessarily. We were a partner for Movie in the Park. It was right over here in Berry Park last Friday night. I think at least one of our elected officials attend to see Hocus Pocus. So our staff participated. I think we had 40 to 50 people in attendance, and it was really well received by the community. So just wanted to announce that. We've talked about it quite a bit through the years, and I actually have a firm that's volunteered to buy us a projector and a screen so we can do them more frequently. But thought it went off really, really well. And in addition to rolling out the new fiscal year, we're 14 days in, still doing just fine on the budget. Nothing's out of control just yet. We're working, we're gearing up for a holiday season. As you guys know, it gets pretty active this time of year between getting fall holiday stuff out and then having to pull it down really quickly after Thanksgiving and get the Christmas stuff out. So staff's doing a lot of planning work for those activities now, and you'll see us go into flurry mode here in the next 6 weeks. So, Mr. Mayor, that concludes my announcements.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Attorney, I was trying to mix it up. Madam Clerk.
I would like to express my deepest condolences to the families of James Jimbo Nipper, who was a former co-worker for 20 years here at the City of Newberry, and Linda Sue Hodge Woodcock, who was a member of our planning and zoning board and served on many various committees throughout the years here during my tenure. So, my deepest sympathy to the families.
Thank you for that. Commissioner Coleman, you got any comments?
Yeah, Mr. Nipper and Nana. People that didn't know, Nana was my campaign manager for 12 or 6 terms. I went and seen her that day or the day before, and she'd always say to me, I always say she's my favorite liberal, and and she would say, well, you're my favorite redneck conservative.
I was thinking, but I didn't see it.
But I love Nana more than them words. I mean, she's a smart lady and always advised me to keep my mouth shut. And a lot of times it worked. That was the pre-COVID Ricky. Yeah. So, but she's in a better place, and I pray for the family right now because I know it's got to be tough.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Commissioner Clark.
Same thing with patriarch and matriarch that we've lost in the community with Jimbo and Nana. So, our condolences are with them, and pray for the family on both. So, if you didn't know either one of them, they missed something. So, and other than that, God bless America, and let's move on.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Farnsworth.
Yes, same. Having known Jimbo and Linda my entire lives, and it's kind of hard to believe they're both gone. But Linda was a very special part of my life and growing up, and they were her mother and father, and were great friends with my parents, and we spent many times with Linda, and we always called her Aunt Linda. We never called her Nana. She was always Aunt Linda. But she took me to movies at the Priest Theater. She took me to Heart Springs, and one time she took me to some beatnik club over in Gainesville. This was like in the 60s. And I watched Water Concrete, and I knew you weren't supposed to eat or drink anything in those places because they give you drugs and stuff, so I wouldn't eat or drink anything. So, they took us to bike. We were pretty much family, so she's going to be very much missed by me and my brothers. On another note, I was wondering if we're going to be working on the LDRs and updating those, and we've been talking about it for quite a while, and I remember meeting with Mike and Brian down at the Red Brick Schoolhouse, and I think they met with all the commissioners, and it doesn't seem like we've made any progress in that regard, and I think it's time to really buckle down and try to get some clarification on some of these things. So hopefully we won't be going through some of the stuff we've had to go with this current project, and get this stuff updated before more homes decide to come into the city, and so there'll be more clarification. And the other thing I was going to ask about is with our contract with the sheriff's department, are we supposed to get a report from the sheriff like every 6 months or so?
To the first one, you guys just approved in this budget a significant amount of money to do that. I can't remember if it was $50,000 or $50,000 to the LDR. So we'll expect by the end of this year, we'll have some significant progress on that front. I think we get monthly reports, but I'm not sure that they go out to the whole commission, and then we get one big annual report. I don't know about a biannual, but I know we get the one big one, and then we get monthly reports on that. Well, if you don't mind, Commissioner Bard, while we're on that topic, and we have Jason here, we identified a loophole in our communication, especially on the weekends, and I want to make sure that it's back on everyone's radar, that when there's noise complaints or issues that happen over the weekend when city staff isn't here, are we getting now reports of, hey, guys, we just want to let you know that there was a noise ordinance complaint at this business, there was this, because we had discovered, and Mike, you can probably answer this question if Jason doesn't know, are we getting Monday morning reports of what happened over the weekend now, or is that still in the works of?
Mr. Mayor, I do not receive a Monday morning report related to police activity or sheriff's activities in our community. I can check with, I've written a note myself, I'll check with our codes enforcement department and see, it may just be going directly to Wayne.
Okay. We had a resident that was complaining, and I asked, well, how many times have you called? And he said it was something like 6 times by that year, but it was like February 4th. So it's, and when I called ASO, he was right. He had called and reported 6 times, but we were not aware. There was no communication happening backwards. So we didn't know that there was 6 noise complaints on one location. And so hopefully we can figure that out and get that line of communication, because we can't address an issue if we don't know there's an issue. And so if it's over the weekend when we're not here, that goes to ASO. So I didn't want to steal, but you jogged my memory.
Yeah, I just remember Sadie would come like every 6 months and give us a report, but I didn't know whether we were still doing that or how we were getting information.
The live reports.
Right.
We haven't had that in a long time. COVID kind of shut that down probably, but I think it's a good idea to ask the sheriff to come back out and give us.
Absolutely.
We're sort of midstream through our contract, a couple of years in, 2-3 more years to go, 2 years in. Yeah. So
Okay.
now would be a good time to.
Start working on it. And kind of curious, do we have anything in place to implement our own police department if we go forward with that? Or is there any?
12 months. You guys pull the trigger, we need 12 months.
But I mean, are we setting aside any money or any
we're
kind
not
of
setting
planning?
aside money, but I'll let the manager, unless you want me to build it. We at locations,
Just
budgeting staff.
We have a plan. I think the last time that the commission said, hey, come up with a very serious plan to how we would start our own police department, and staff did and presented it to the commission and got a head nod that that's what we're thinking, and we had a time frame that it would take us, and I think it was probably closer to 18 months. That'd give us time to hire a chief and then do all the pre-planning. That's best of all worlds. We could compress it if necessary, but we had kind of pre-planned for 18 months. We knew what the annual operating budget would be, and we have talked about, had some discussions about where we would locate a police station. I think the lead candidate or staff's recommendation would be the existing Public Works compound, which is scheduled to move out to the wastewater plant when we construct, have those construction activities out there. We'd even talked about we could do startup in some portables and then transition into a permanent facility as we move forward. And we had annualized the operating costs so that we could avoid, just through debt service, so that we could avoid the big smack at the beginning of the startup cost. So I think if I recall correctly, our annualized costs were about $1.7 million to operate our own police department, somewhere in the $1.6, $1.7 million range. So we have a plan, and it was a PowerPoint presentation. If we want a refresher, I'll just talk quicker, cover the items with a lower level of detail. But we know that we could get a police department stood up for Newberry in less than 2 years if that's the commission's desire.
Okay.
My memory is 12 months is like something bad has happened.
Yes.
We can make it happen. 18 months is better. 24 is ideal.
Absolutely.
And we have formulas for how many staff. So if we come back to this in a year from now, 2 years from now, we know what to plug in to kick back out. This is what it's going to cost. So.
Yeah, I just want this commission to really consider that. I mean, we're getting to a point where I think it really would be beneficial to the citizens. Instead of giving our money to the county, we can start using it for our own citizens and our own police department. And I mean, if High Springs can have a police department, I don't understand why Newberry can't. But
Well, Mike, I think it's probably about time because this has always been a scales, right? So what we know it's more expensive to run our own. The question is how much more expensive is it, right? Every year it gets a little bit more expensive with AFSO, but every year it also gets more expensive for us to run our own. So dusting that information out and then remembering that a lot of the services that our residents are asking for, we can't get to if we don't have our own police department. So they want, speed checks, they want more neighborhood patrolling, all of those kinds of things. We can get that as a courtesy here and there with ASO, but our contract says we get one guy, right? So it's those kinds of questions, and they're more intangible. Like we can't just put a dollar sign and say it's costing us $1 million for ASO. It costs us 1.5. We have to have a better understanding of it. Yeah, it's more expensive, but we're also getting a very different level of service. It's been a year or two since we've had that conversation, so.
yeah, I mean, whenever a citizen has to call 6 times regarding a noise complaint, and I mean, I think that if it could have been handled better by our own police department.
I mean, there's a whole lot of communication issues that would just sort of go away if they were in-house, because our chief would be speaking with the manager on Monday morning and say, man, our guys were out all night Friday and Saturday night doing this, this, and this. Whereas now we have to make a concerted effort to do that. Questions about our ordinances wouldn't be questions anymore because a Newberry police chief would know Newberry ordinances and would enforce Newberry ordinances, right? So, I mean, I think it's worth just a refresher because the last time we looked at it, it was 1.6 for us to run our own. It was 1. The way inflation's going, it might be 2 million to run our own. Who knows? My mind, I really like the location of the public work compound. It puts one essential service on one side of the railroad track, one service on the other. We can't really abandon that spot because that's where our well is. We need that location. I think it would be in the neighborhood. It'd make people feel pretty good, especially if you make it look like a neighborhood police department, not a prison compound, that kind of a thing. But we need to get the waste folks moved out before that even really becomes an option. What's our timeline on 2-3 years before we're moving public works out to the wastewater, or is that 5 years?
identified in our 5-year CIP, but we hadn't hit the year that we were gonna start funding
Making
design
an effort.
process
Yeah.
for the building. I think our plan has been, let's get a little bit further along with the wastewater plant expansion, get the land acquired, get all those
Yeah.
things divvied up before we started trying to program exactly which year we would make the operations center construction project.
I mean, right now, I think we are getting an extremely fair deal out of ASO, and that's set on a 3% increase, every year. So, in terms of the dollar figure, we're not going to beat what we got right now. It's about, in my mind, it's about service, expectation from the community, and then if it's more expensive, how do we pay for it, right? And one of those impact fees we're going after could potentially be a way. Aren't we going after public works, public safety? Public buildings.
General government, that doesn't include police.
Wow, police are not general government. All right.
And Mr. Mayor, if I recall, and it's been a little while, but if I recall, there was kind of a unanimous feeling from the commission that we had, probably the biggest hurdle for us was we had a lot of irons in the fire at the time, and the commission preferred us to be focusing on, I guess, the current projects that we're addressing. But when we dust something off, and we'll try to get something to you in say the next 90 days, get it dusted off and present, maybe then becomes a good time to, well, let's circle a date in the calendar where we're having, when we think it would be. We don't have to pull the trigger on it until it comes time to start, funding something, but we'd have a plan that it's a 3-year, 5-year, 8-year objective.
Yeah. All right. I agree. Any more else, Commissioner Farnsworth? Commissioner Martin, any comments?
Excuse me. I did not know Jimbo and Miss Linda very well. I had several interactions with both of them. The biggest telling thing for me, particularly with Miss Linda, was if I don't know somebody deeply or whatever, I look at what kind of impact they've had. And that church was packed out. And there were so many people there. That was pretty much all I needed to know about her beyond what I already did know. This week is homecoming week at the school, big week. We are certainly getting very close to hitting the holiday season. So just kind of start making your plans accordingly for that. I'm sure we're going to start talking about holiday schedule on the commission side of things here shortly. But when's Halloween? Yeah, when's Halloween?
It's on the next agenda.
Next agenda is when we decide we're doing for Halloween? Okay.
Special meeting.
Commissioner Maison?
Yes, ma'am. All right, so Nana, had a conversation with her on the phone, and she told me, she said, could you please stop calling me Linda and call me Nana just once? She did. And so I said, now. I called her Nana. But I do want to say this. I have never, I ain't going to say never, it's been a long time since I've been welcomed in a home the way I was welcomed with her. That was like, that was I don't know if you guys, if she's ever invited you guys in her home. I'm pretty sure she have. But when I got invited in that house, it was she offered me everything in that kitchen. She did. She sure did. Grabbed my hand and we started talking. And I was looking at her like, looking around over my shoulders thinking, this is weird, but I like it. But that's just a little shy of 2 years. So I can imagine the family, the friends, and that goes all the way down to the grandkids. So my heart and my prayers goes out to that family, and the Nipper family. I haven't met him, but my heart goes out with the Wilcox. Right, Woodcocks. On a second note, downtown Main Street, talking about the holidays. I'm sure you guys have driven through our great city of Newberry and seen those scarecrows on both sides, and they look good. I've seen a couple good ones. They're up and they're going. Over 30 businesses have participated. I would like to.
Contest?
Huh?
They're having a contest?
Yes.
Yeah, they're taking pictures today.
Yeah. You seen them? Them scarecrows? They're real good. Very creative. Huh?
Granddad's Groove. Might be a good one. I might check it out.
And downtown Main Street is actually Miss Frances Give props to her and the committee that for putting this on. Also, they're starting to build the gingerbread window fronts. As I was delivering, they're working on it, which was a good thing. And also a reminder that the festival, the fall festival, is going to be Saturday, the 19th of November, from 9 to 4 p.m. 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And you want me to give you that joke you've been looking for? Okay, I'll give you a joke. How do you rob a coat? How do you rob a coat? You jack it.
Oh, each week is yeah. I'm with you. I like them. I steal it every day, next day in school. Right?
Come on, that was good. Come on, that was good. Come on, that was good.
I certainly echo all the condolences that everybody said. I didn't know Jimbo that well, but I walked through awful lot of clouds of cigarette smoke leaving Country Kitchen, because that's where he would sit, and you'd walk out and he'd just right there, be a big old cloud, And I drove behind him in that truck. I've probably spent a good 2-3 years of my life driving behind him in that truck, trying to get down the road, But he always reminded you to just stop and take it slow, And I take kids to Europe periodically, and I can always tell my students and my parents that I've never once lost a student, but I did lose a Nana. We were in Rome at the Parthenon, and turned around and, hey, Sarah, where's your grandmother at? I don't know. Well, anybody see Nana? No. I said, well, look around. We stood there about 30 minutes. She just walked right back up, kept on talking. I didn't know we'd been looking for. I went over here, I went over there, and just as smooth as it could be. But on that trip, we got out in Florence, and she bought one of those big float things for the kids to play out in the water, because we were staying on the beach, and she just had a heart for kids, and she just wanted to see them have a good time. And no matter what we were doing, she was thinking about them and whether or not they were really enjoying it and what she could do to make it better. So, and I agree with Commissioner Martin. It's a great measure to see how many folks came out. Commissioner Martin and I got put to work seating people, because there was no place to put everybody. So, our heart collectively goes out to the family. We'll be with them as they work through that loss. I did have just a couple of things. We brought this up at the P&Z, Mike, but I want to make sure that we are communicating top to bottom. So before you guys hear ordinances, the developer's agreement is pretty well worked out, and you guys get it in your backup material. You're able to have conversations, and when we hear presentations, we're able to hear what the developer is bringing to the community. And I think that changes the nature of the conversation, but those developers' agreements are usually not finalized in front of the P&Z. So the P&Z only hears the number of houses, the impact of the traffic. They don't generally get to hear that this developer is going to pave a road, is going to give us land for a water tower, So, and I think it's not fair to the developer, the applicants, to be put in that situation, because they are generally offering substantial amounts of infrastructure improvements, but the P&Z doesn't get to see that. So I think structurally, before we get in front of the P&Z, we need to have the developer's agreement there so that the P&Z doesn't give the applicant as hard of a time, because oftentimes what the questions the P&Z are asking is, well, what are you going to do about this? What are you going to do about that? All that's in the developer's agreement, but the P&Z doesn't know it. I think it also doesn't give a fair moment for them to advise you, because they only have one half of the coin. So if we can slow that down, make sure that the P&Z is seeing everything that this board is seeing. So if they say yay or nay, it's based on the whole application. And that's a conversation for you to have with your staff, Mike. But this is kind of an aside, but I think we've just finished our budgets. We're going to finish the merit pay increases, and those are going to go into effect soon. And I want to say how diligent this board has been in the last 5, 6, 7 years at not missing those merit pay increases, having something there. This year you did merit pay and a COLA. There are board members up here who work for institutions that are giving 1% raises, no raises, right? That are not creating work environments. When I look at the things that this board has implemented in the city of Newberry in terms of maternity leave, paternity leave, tuition reimbursements, team building exercises, awareness of mental health, HR services, there's not a day that goes by where I think that my employer could learn a lot from the city of Newberry and the way that you guys treat these employees. So I want to give you guys props for that, because I don't experience the same level of concern for my mental health or financial health in my workplace, or that if I'm being asked to do too much or too little. I think the flip side of that is that what generally happens when employees have gotten raises fairly regularly and consistently is that there becomes to be an expectation of that. And then if the raise isn't as much, well, then there's bitterness and sourness on that side. So I want to publicly say thank you to you guys. I think our staff is worth every single penny that we pay. I think y'all are doing a phenomenal job. But I'd like management to make sure that we're communicating that our business, our entity, is taking care of employees in a way that most of these people up here have never experienced. I don't know that you ever got that from the county. I don't know that you ever get that. You probably not get that from the Marines.
It's just a good old sipper for them to get it done.
Yeah, right? I don't know about the delivery service, how well they treat you guys, but I think we treat our employees head and shoulders. And I want to publicly say thank you to you guys, and I want to have a cautionary tale to our own employees about losing sight of that, because that has taken quite a commitment that has transferred from commission to commission. It was not the case when I first came on, and I'm not advocating that we go back to the way that was, because I think the way you guys do it is the way it should be done. But I also want to make sure that our employees are reminded that, because I hear a lot about, well, other places pay more, and that may be true, but I don't know another place that treats their employees as good as you guys have directed management to treat our employees. And finally, I just want to say thank you to the chamber, the first Fridays. I encourage you. I know that the black tie and blue jeans is the same night, but our chamber in Newberry came under a lot of fire because it was the Newberry-Jonesville chamber, and there was a lot of feeling that Jonesville took up a lot of the oxygen in the room. And so that Newberry-Jonesville chamber organization came under a lot of scrutiny and criticism. They have heard that. They've divorced. It's now the Newberry chamber, so it's a Newberry chamber. And they have hit the ground running. They got a new president. They put on their first event with First Fridays. They have something planned for every Saturday from Thanksgiving to Christmas to bring people into our downtown. I was here. We went out to dinner in 1906. I ran into the owner. He was raving. He said, "This is fantastic, man. We got to do this more often." I said, "Well, it's a balancing act. You don't want to overkill it, do it just enough." Sycamore Lane, Joel stayed open. I went in there. There were people in there shopping at 8 o'clock at night because of the First Friday. So I think that this is something that we need to encourage. They hear us when we offer criticism, and they also see us when we're not there participating in the events that we've asked them to do. So I get that October 20th, there's a conflict, right? But if anybody can come to the chamber banquet, they would really appreciate that feedback of, hey, we see you as community volunteers who are really working. These are all people doing this in their own time, right? Working to bring folks to downtown Newberry. So I'm looking forward to it. I love the Newberry Notables. There's 25 different awards that are going to be given out for businesses and people for doing a whole range of things. And every single person that's on that list deserves to win the award, and that's fantastic. And it's one of the primary reasons why I think we need to do this, because we have an army of volunteers in this community that work behind the shadows, making this community great. And this is one night a year where we can bring them out into the limelight, shine the spotlight on them, and say thank you for working all year long to make it happen. And with that, that'll conclude my comments. I'm sorry I got long-winded tonight. Public comment.
Man, you are loyal.
Hearing none, we are adjourned.